We've been waiting for the Vanderpump Rules reunion since the Scandoval broke in March.
Tom Sandoval had to face the cast for the first time, and they absolutely destroyed him. Welcome back to the Real Couchwives podcast, where we overanalyze all things Bravo.
First part of the Vanderpump Rules reunion kicks off with sit-down interviews with Andy, which I feel like is the first time that we've seen that. And he sits down separately with Tom, Raquel, and Ariana. Iris, what do you think were the most enlightening parts of those interviews?
Beyond the outfit choices that each one of them had, Ariana made a really good point. She says that at this point, Sandoval is basically going to say anything and he's going to throw out anything and to see what sticks, right? He's got a lot of excuses. He's got a lot of lies. He's just going to try to take anybody down that he can with him while he's going down. And then also Sandoval, once again, we see this expertly crafted narrative that he's continuing to perpetuate. I was basically her gay best friend. I was, telling the producers that I wanted us to have a real authentic storyline on this season, even though he was already cheating with Raquel at that point.
Don't get me started on that one.
And then he also was this, I just such a deep connection with Raquel, and kind of also just going over this alleged timeline of their relationship, but also being super vague of the night at the Mondrian. Well, it was the see you next Tuesday after that when we went to the Abbey, and that's when it was just so many little details that are peppered in to make sure you're as confused as possible.
I hated it. I mean, I was happy that Ariana got to speak. I am interested in what Raquel is going to say when she eventually gets the episodes. It looks like it's going to be kind of sprinkled in throughout, but overall, not that much was shown that's new in these sit-down interviews, especially because we just saw the Call Her Daddy interview with Ariana, which was super enlightening, and I think actually gave a whole new read to how we're watching a lot of the reunion scenes, which we will get into later on, so definitely stick around for that. Following that, it went right into the reunion, and that was pretty much the last opportunity that Tom had to speak, was that interview that he just was in, because the cast was not having any of it. It was amazing.
It was amazing. A decision to seat James and Lala beside each other was just comedy gold. It made the reunion so light and fun, all of their little remarks that they were making to one another, even just Tom breaks down at the very beginning and he's doing his and James is I didn't buy that for a second, and Lala's I wasn't even listening.
Yeah.
Didn't even listen.
I didn't think that I really needed and wanted to see those two be so explosive. I remember when we heard rumblings, we were kind of well, that's kind of why were they the two that were so angry? But you know what? Once I was there and I was watching it, I was bless them. They are killing it. And it is amazing. I laughed so much more than I thought I was going to laugh during this reunion.
Yeah, I know. Well, and also just seeing the strong camaraderie between the that cast, that side, basically, everybody sitting beside Ariana
and Sheena, but they put her on the other side.
Sheena unfortunately has to be on the other side of the boys. The kind of ally ship that we were seeing between the 4 to 5 of them, depending on how you kind of count it, just so great to watch. It really made it feel like they were such a united front against the Toms, and a little bit against Lisa too, right?
Oh my gosh, yeah. Lisa was working overtime to kind of rehabilitate the Toms' image, and it's this was not the time to do that, Lisa.
No, I know.
Honestly, I feel after we had to watch the entire season of the Toms, more so Sandoval, but Tom Schwartz was also complicit in it, put together this narrative, and we had to sit through that. We had to watch all of these lies. It was so nice that at this reunion, they were just not letting him even start. And like you said, right from the beginning, Andy's well, Tom, do you have anything to say to Ariana and to the cast before we start? And cue the waterworks.
Yeah.
It was literally a meme. I just want to say... And he starts crying right away. Everyone's no!
God, how dare you? You're a horrible human being.
What's the Khloe Kardashian? Liar!
I know. Well, and it was interesting too, because if you think about the way that Lisa kind of got the internet went after her a little bit after the last finale episode where she filmed with Sandoval, and she was seen to be a little bit too sympathetic to him. I didn't really think that she was that sympathetic in the finale episode, but seeing her kind of then a few weeks later in this reunion episode back up her support of him and actually be a lot more forgiving towards him than she was in the finale, is like, okay, Lisa, like, yeah, maybe this one you should have sat out. Like, maybe they should have just brought you in like halfway through as like a friend of or something. Because this is not a good look for you. And I think all the damage control that she thought she was doing for the Toms actually just put more damage on like her own brand and her own self, right? Like, because everybody is like, what are you doing here?
Yeah, totally. It was so weird. And she seemed to like have more anger towards Lala than like what she's ever really even shown to Sandoval. I didn't understand that read at all. But I did really enjoy all of them ripping into Tom and him not being able to say a single thing. Also, Ariana with her like comebacks were also amazing. She wouldn't even look him in the eye, which she did say in Call Her Daddy. She's like, I went into it not even want to look at him. And she's like, if you address me, like I will look at the wall. Like
yeah, I will literally look at anything else. Yeah, she did an incredible job. Like I just, we said it again last week that she just really is such an incredible example. Like I just wish that we could all be as good as Ariana when we're like going up against these like toxic men. And like she just once again like proved why she's like winning this relationship breakup, right? She's incredible for sure.
I love her. And then we also saw lots of things that were just kind of proven wrong. I think knowing like what we know in the Call Her Daddy interview, I feel like she disproved a lot of things that Tom had been saying, like a lot of them about like the relationship wasn't where it should have, like it wasn't in the place that we wanted it to be, and like there was all these issues. But we know it, like in that interview she was saying like, I didn't buy a house as a band-aid. Like that wasn't where the headspace that I was in at all. Or even like all of his lies that he was putting out about, oh, she didn't follow me to see that I was cheating, and like she didn't even care. Like if she paid attention to all, she would have known. We now know that she was paying attention. Like she would ask him things and he would refute them, and he had like apps on his phone to show, to hide his texts and everything. And one of the more explosive things we found out is that he was getting people to pay on their own credit cards for Raquel.
Yeah, I know. And then he was Venmoing them the money back. Like that's just what a situation to be put in as a friend, right? Like to have to kind of like buy a ticket for somebody's mistress. Like what a weird.
Yeah, it was so strange. And apparently other things come out after the, like Ariana found certain things, I think like that one out after the reunion. So there's things that had been continuing to come up that she wasn't even able to address during the reunion. So I'm glad that she got to time to like do that on the podcast.
Yeah, well, and I thought it was interesting too when Andy asked Sandoval, like, you have this opportunity to like come clean, like talk to your friends, like address the group here and now. And that he like, instead of just like going in and like genuinely giving a real apology of like, guys, I'm really sorry. I know that I effed up. Like, I know that like I, made a mistake and this was the wrong thing to do. And I handled it completely incorrectly. And I think that the like energy in the reunion would have been very different. And then even when Sandoval was then asked a little bit later of like, why not come clean with Ariana, instead of saying the truth of I was scared or I didn't want to, like having that opportunity to actually give a real answer, he just continues to perpetuate more of his lies of like, well, he does admit he was scared too, which I think is true. But then it's also like she was going through a lot and I didn't want to add to that. And it's just like, why do you think that this is always a better solution? Like lying to her is the better solution than just like actually telling her the truth and like actually breaking up with her, actually being the bad guy.
I know. And it's like, if you didn't want to add to it, then like you shouldn't have been doing, like if you didn't want to add to the grief and like the bad place that Ariana was in, then you shouldn't have been doing what you're doing. Like why was your decision to do these horrible things and then just not tell her about it? It's because that wasn't the reason. The reason was he didn't want to look bad.
Yeah, he wanted her to break up for him.
She's even said, she said like when she found out, they were in a cab, I guess, because they were like fighting at Schwartz and Sandy's or Tom or whichever one they were at. He didn't want people to see. And like apparently from the second she found out, he was victim blaming her. He was being super dismissive. He was yelling at her. We find out that like he even like downplayed his relationship with Sheena. It's just so messed up. Like the way that he spun this entire entire thing. Like we've said it so many times, but it's just like so incredible to see the way that he just continues to like dig himself into this hole.
Well, and that's an interesting point too that you bring up of like him like yelling at her and kind of like victim blaming her and all this stuff. Like an interesting point that comes up in the reunion is Lala comparing Sandoval to Randall Emmett and, you know, saying like he is a dangerous person. Like, do we think that that's true? Do we think Tom Sandoval is like a Randall Emmett 2.0? Like he could be like this guy?
Well, we know that Lisa doesn't think that because she got very upset at that comment.
Very upset, I know.
Yeah, I mean, I think the sentence that Lala backed that up with was very telling, where she was like, you know, I couldn't get Randall to stay home with me when we were together. And then when I found these things out, I couldn't get him away. You know, there's different I was listening actually to the Reality Bites podcast who was talking about this as well, and there's different levels of danger, you know, like danger doesn't have to be like physical danger or like, I don't know, like a murderer or something. Like if he's willing to go to these lengths and like put his partner in this situation, his like, you know, his partner of 9 years, his business partner too, he's like he's dangerous to their bar, kind of like he's causing negative effects on their business, on his partner's mental health. Like, I think you could make a case for that.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I agree. I mean, I don't think I would have agreed a few months or weeks ago, even. Like, I think that I didn't really see it at first. And I definitely didn't think he was anywhere on the level of like a Randall Emmett. But like hearing about how much like yelling he seems to do, right? Like that's I think the part that kind of like scares me or like worries me a little bit. And also like hearing that he is kind of like like he's coming over to the house unannounced, especially at the beginning, you know, when they were supposed to have like a go-between that would allow them to kind of like both operate in the home like separately, and like the fact that he wasn't respecting that kind of makes me feel like he was being a little bit vindictive and like, you know, borderline abusive, right? Like it makes you feel unsafe in your home if you are like so isolated from this person and you no longer want to be near him, you no longer want to see him, and he's not like respecting the fact that like he needs to check in with somebody when he's going to come, when he's going to go, like any of that kind of stuff. So I definitely think that like more details have come out about him and how he's behaved like post this whole like, you know, Scandoval breaking that make me see the similarities. Obviously Randall Emmett also did a lot of like other really atrocious stuff that like go beyond just the cheating and lying and, you know, being a gross human being. But yeah, I don't know, I guess anything's kind of possible, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think to make a comparison to Rando, who has actually done a lot of like illegal things, and like it's definitely not, it's not a fair comparison in that way. Like we're not comparing apples to apples, but I think the comment in and of itself is not unreasonable to say, you know, like he's also been very manipulative in the past. I understand like this is also Lisa's business partner, and obviously like that is not something that you want to have out there in connection to someone that you're in business with. So to a certain extent, I can kind of give Lisa a little bit of credit that like, I do think she's in a tough spot. Like, what is she going to do? Like, she has a bar called Tom Tom.
Yeah. Like literally she has like a picture of the two Toms kissing, like hanging up in that bar. Like, but that is not the beacon of like gay hope that she thought it was going to be when she opened up a boy bar in like the West Village.
It's so true. Like
West Hollywood.
Like she's basically watching her business investment like go up in flames. But at the same time, like I feel like the places where she's choosing to insert herself aren't like, those aren't the battles that you should be fighting. Like she inserts herself in like such strange ways, even like against Lala, when Lala made that comment that she sees similarities in the ways that Tom Sandoval is acting towards Raquel is very similar to when he was with Kristen. And it's how he was talking about Ariana when he was like essentially kind of cheating with Ariana. And that was a fair point to make, right? Like even Ariana said there were so many similarities, and Lisa was like, that's not fair. Like you weren't even there. Like you didn't watch the show. Like, and she was so angry at Lala.
I know.
And it's like, What?
I loved Lala's like response to that too. She's like, I watched it on television.
Yeah.
Like Lala probably had a better front row seat for like the what happened with Ariana, Kristen, and Tom than like Tom, Ariana, or Kristen did, right? Like,
And
well,
like you can actually go and like line up these things and see that they're similar. Like it was
Yeah.
actually a legitimate thing to say.
Oh, totally. Well, and it was really interesting too that he did like default to like, hey, let me bring in Kristen and talk about how she was on a
And how she's
rampage.
crazy.
She's the crazy person. And I just love that the group immediately shut that down. They're like, Tom, don't even try. Like, that was 10 years ago. Like, we're all over it. Like, James and Kristen obviously have their past as well, and they have their issues, and I know that they still have a bit of a feud. But it doesn't hold the same weight that it would have if Tom Sandoval brought Kristen up like in a couple reunions ago, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. And that's why I was just like, honestly, like I hated the way that Lisa was so, what's it called? Just like forgiving. And like,
yeah,
she was really, I didn't understand how hard she was going to try to honestly rehabilitate the image of the Toms. Like, this just wasn't the moment. Like this reunion was clearly it was like cathartic, and it was for everyone to like yell at Tom, and that's what it was.
Yeah.
That was the assignment.
That was what we were here to watch. That's what everybody tuned in for. 2 million people tuned in live to be able to see Tom Sandoval get absolutely destroyed. Like, that's what we wanted.
We did a poll.
We did.
And Tom Sandoval getting destroyed was the number
that
one
was the
thing.
number one thing. That's what everybody wanted to see.
People wanted to see more so than Raquel.
Yeah.
Like, it's
oh yeah, like won by a landslide.
Like I think you can still protect your business while denouncing what Tom did, and she just like chose to, I don't know, protect him. She's just like so much harsher on the ladies. Like
she is.
Always.
She totally is. She always has been. Like the way that she fought with Stassi and Kristen like all of the time, and like Kristen like constantly getting banned from Sir, or even just like fired in general. Like I feel like Kristen was fired or put on pause like 1.5 million times before she was officially banned.
Well, she did go after James, who I feel like she historically doesn't do. And it was James who was protecting Chris, who was basically protecting Katie, which is something that you would not think that you would see.
I literally never in a million years thought that I would ever see the day that James Kennedy would be like backing up Katie Maloney. Like
I know, and that's when Lisa was like, "Oh, like you're not Mother Teresa, James," and all he was trying to say is that you should like respect your girlfriend or your wife. Like...
I know. Well, and the thing is too, like James, at least like he's trying to demonstrate that he has changed and that he is not the person that he was when he was 21 and like hooked up with Kristen behind Tom Sandoval's back, when he was 25 and cheated with Lala on Raquel. Like he's not that person anymore. He wants us to know that. And I think, you know, he's gotten a very good spot in the fact that he is now kind of like, he has been dubbed the number one guy in the group. He's the only surviving guy on this show that any of us like.
And to be fair, he definitely isn't like, he's also very problematic.
He's
but
not
the thing is like, he's hilarious.
I know. He gets away with murder just by being funny.
And by the other guys, it's the Jax Taylor effect. Like now the new Jax Taylor is the Toms. So because of that, James looks better.
Yeah, exactly. And he points that out too, right? He's like, well, it's not hard to compete with the Tweedledee and Tweedledum.
Yeah.
What did he say?
I think he said Schwartz and a clown or something.
Schwartz and a clown too, yeah.
Worm with a mustache.
So many good one-liners in this one.
I mean, speaking of James too, it was also such comic relief when Andy had to speak to him like a child.
Yeah.
When he was like, sit in the chair. Like sit down, just stay in the effing chair. Yeah. The uncensored version was also fantastic.
God. It was so good. Like I can never go back. And I also always need the extended version too. Like the extended version, I watched both of them, and the extended version was like so much better than the regular version.
Oh, I only watched the extended one, so I don't know which pieces were in there. on my second watch, I literally had to watch it twice because the first time, like,
too much.
It was so fast. I couldn't even tell you what happened. And then my second time, I was able to kind of like break it down and like have a better understanding of like what I had just witnessed. And and like I was watching it with headphones on, and I'm sitting there and like watching it. My boyfriend's playing a game or something, and every so often I go like, "What?" or like I laugh out loud. And every time he's like, "What?" I'm like,
I can't even begin to explain what just happened. I know. I was like hitting Scott. Like I was like, "Oh my god, can you believe that just happened?"
It was so. But one part I did pick up that I picked up on my second watch is when James was coming back. One of the producers is like, use your words, not your fists."
Yeah, I loved that. I thought that was great. It's good advice for all of us. I did think it was interesting. So because in the finale, James kind of like talks about how he is so upset by what's happened with Scandoval breaking, and how he's actually really upset that his relationship with Sandoval has been impacted by this, because he thought that they were better friends than clearly Sandoval thought that they were. And it was just so wild to see that kind of come back up in the reunion, and for him, James, to like basically compare Sandoval to like a brother to him, somebody who's been like a big brother to him, which is obviously really nice for James, because James is the big brother in his own family. He was the one that was like giving his little brother like, you know, $5,000 when he was going through college to like, you know, keep him afloat or whatever. He was taking care of his family as soon as he got the like job as well, like, you know, doing all of this. And so for him to have had then Sandoval be able to like fill in that role and to have a little bit more of like, you know, a parental guidance, big brother experience from Sandoval, to the point that Sandoval even like helped pay for his engagement like party, right? It's just kind of like it is so upsetting that Sandoval has either decided that he like no longer cares about James, or what like gymnastics Sandoval's had to do in his mind to like get over like this kind of like friendship, right? Like he's clearly had to do something to like compartmentalize it so that he could hook up with Raquel.
I think it's what he did. It's the same thing he's doing to Sheena. Like he has to like diminish a lot of his friendships to make what he's doing feel okay.
Yeah.
And that's what he did here too. Yeah. Like he's like, what do you mean? Like I talk to you like once a month. And like James was actually super hurt by that, which I now understand, because I also didn't understand why James was so angry about it at the beginning. Like obviously it's super uncomfortable because it was like his ex-fiance.
Yeah.
But I don't think we ever got a sense that they were like super close. But I don't think James was lying about those things. But it's true. Like it's so messed up. Like he paid, like Sandoval paid for their engagement party.
Yeah. Like... Well, and also so something that Sandoval like implied, I guess, in his one-on-one with Andy is he says at the beginning, so Andy asked like, when did this all start? And Sandoval says in the beginning of the year last year, which would be like January 2022, which is like doesn't that kind of overlap with like when James and Raquel were still together, like before they like I think that lines up, right, with like when the reunion would have been taped last year and they would have ended, or at least when they would have ended their engagement, right? And there's a lot of theories out there that, you know, maybe some of this overlap happened with not just Ariana, but it also happened with James. And so that kind of also like does make me wonder, like if Sandoval did have to diminish his friendship with James in order to be able to like have this relationship with Raquel, like did he do that when James and Raquel were still together, and that was how he kind of like dealt with that in his mind and like made it okay? He's like, we're not that good of friends, like we're okay.
That would be
like...
so gross. Yeah, I know. So there is this like speculation that apparently there's going to be this huge bomb that drops after the reunion, and like the cast doesn't even know about it. They're only going to see it after.
Yeah.
Which makes me feel like it has to be something that comes from those interviews, right? Because like everything else they would have been present at.
And I think the article that talked about it, when Alex Baskin talked about it, he said literally only the person who like filmed it and the person that like is in the interview know. So like it might even be something that like Andy Cohen doesn't even know. Like we don't know. Like
well,
that's how
explosive
it could be.
The speculation is it could be that Raquel and Tom Sandoval were like hooking up kind of during her time with James, but then more people would know. I don't know. And also, I don't think that would change. Like, everyone already hates him. So, like, they're just going to hate him more. I don't feel like it's going to be that.
That's just it. Like, I feel like I've kind of, like, run through so many different scenarios of, like, okay, who would actually not come back if that's what the case was, right? Because, like, James already feels super insulted by the fact that Sandoval, you know, disrespects their friendship and doesn't think that it was a thing that ever happened. So that is something that James already knows. So I don't think that could change that, even though obviously it would still be like pretty messed up. I have to wonder if it's like, I almost think it has to be like Sheena knew or like something like that, like something massive where, and I just don't know if I believe that there is going to be like something like massive enough that we could actually be shocked.
No, same. And then there's also the Raquel's pregnant speculation, which I also don't think anyone really believes.
No, and I think they finally addressed that and they said that that's not the case.
Okay. I mean,
I saw like an Entertainment Tonight thing or something on that.
It's also speculated that it could just be like they need a break for filming because something is going to come out and they want to be able to give it enough like breathing room that they can kind of like capture it once they do start filming.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll just have to wait and see.
I wish they just released them all right now so that we can know. Like, just let us know. Like,
just give us the whole 10 hours. We'll watch it.
Unedited, just like full raw footage. Like, follow them around. We'll do anything. It's like the Big Brother style where you can just like live stream it and like watch it like live and see what's happening. Like, oh my God, what's going on?
I love it. And then the next piece I wanted to get into is Schwartz and Katie.
Mr. Schwartz.
Before we get into that, please subscribe if you love Real Couchwives content. You want to help us get to BravoCon. We have to have 1,000 subscribers to get there. We're halfway there.
We did it, guys. We did it, Joe.
Please like and subscribe.
Yeah.
Moving on. Schwartz is asked about the timeline again, and now he has had adequate time to prepare his response. Yeah. And he is able to get it out with no mumbling and no putting his hands in his face.
Yeah.
This is not his first rodeo.
No, it was pretty impressive. He did a really good job. It definitely felt like he was fully like coached and like rehearsed. Like it felt so like done, right? Like it felt like it had been practiced.
But not coached enough.
Not
to line up his timeline with Sandoval.
Yeah, unfortunately, that was the one thing that they hadn't quite coordinated.
That was such an amazing piece of television.
I know.
So according to Schwartz, he finds out in July that I guess Sandoval and Raquel have been getting really close, and he's been confiding in her and having intimate moments.
Yeah.
The word, like, why did you choose the word intimate?
No, gross.
But then he says he found out in late August about the one night stand.
Yeah.
Everyone keeps saying this, but it's like, that was not a one night stand. Like, a one night stand is with a random person that you never see again. Like,
yeah. Oh, such a good point.
Yeah.
Just a little bit more anonymity.
Yeah, just to make it like diminish, and it's like, whatever, it's just a one night stand.
Exactly.
And then when he says late August, Sandoval's like, what?
August?
And then Lala's like, oh no, did you not put your timelines together to match?
It was so good. I know. Well, and it was just interesting too, because like Schwartz's explanation of it was, this was a mistake. This was alcohol. This was what have I done? And I feel like even, you know, Sandoval saying that to Schwartz was a very tailored version of events, right? Like, as if, you know, oh, it's alcohol, it's a mistake, it's I don't know what I'm doing, I'm having a midlife crisis. Like, he's already got like the gears turning of like, this is what I'm gonna say to make it seem like I'd feel really bad about the fact that this happened, when I don't think that he felt that it happened. I don't think for a second that he felt bad for that it happened.
No, for sure.
It was all about getting his mojo back. That's what it was. That was what the greater purpose in life is.
The elusive mojo. I really feel like Sandoval has a book. Like, he He has like a book and it has steps and chapters, and he gives it out to Schwartz and Raquel.
They're like, here you go, guys. Okay, just read all this. These are all of my lies. Make sure that you memorize them. We're gonna have a pop quiz tomorrow.
But then he forgot to pop quiz them. And
yeah, exactly. That was the one thing. Well, and it was interesting too, because then there is a moment in the reunion where Schwartz basically needs Sandoval to then back him up, right? Schwartz has been doing all of this legwork. He's been sitting beside Sandoval this entire time, like trying to defend him as much as humanly possible, interjecting as he can. And then they start to talk about like this like alleged double date in Big Bear, where it's like, okay, it's not really alleged because it was like, they can claim all they want that it was not a double date, but like if four people that are both in couples or couple-like relationships go on a trip. Yeah, whatever it may be. If they go on a trip together, it's like a couple's vacation. It's a couple's vacation to go snowboarding in Big Bear. And that's like the one time that Schwartz like is like, tell them it wasn't a double date. And like Sandoval just like sits there and then he's like, yeah, it's not true. Like, Sandoval, God, like, way to go. Like, really, like, sticking up for your friend there, buddy. Like, what is this?
It's such a good point. And something I was thinking as I was watching it too is like, Schwartz is, we've talked about this before, like, Schwartz is letting his life get blown up because of his blind loyalty to Sandoval. And I even noticed a piece of it with Lisa when they were talking about the bar, not to go into like a complete different tangent, but when I think Andy's like, oh, Lisa, like, how long would it take you to turn around this Mexican cantina into Schwartz and Sandy's? Yeah. And as he's saying that, like, they show Sandoval and he's rolling his eyes. And it's like, Lisa is basically getting her reputation attacked because of making these stances. And like, Sandoval doesn't even respect her. He honestly doesn't. Like, all he does is bitch about her in his confessionals. And he's just like, people are just letting this man drag them down. Yeah, I know. And like, that's just it. Like, she's stood up for you so many times. Even like him going after Greg, like that's, I don't know. I think that only happens in the extended version, but he does. He like goes into on Greg at one point. He's like, Greg and I have always had a bit of a strained relationship. It's like, this is your business partner. You work with this guy. Like, no matter what kind of like arrangement that you had with like the, the rent and like how that was maybe like not the right way to do it. This guy is like your business partner and he's providing money and capital to like get your business up and running. Like, he was a real restaurateur that like actually knows how to do this. And you just like took him for granted. You didn't take any time to like learn how to do this. You completely disrespected him on this TV show. He badmouthed him so much on camera. So much. It's I'd be so pissed if I was Greg. Like, yeah. And to your point too, like even for Lisa to like listen to that confessional of Sandoval being like, we don't really want to do things the way that Lisa Vanderpump wants to do things. Like, we really want to do things like our own way because we have so much restaurant experience. We can totally do this. Like, let's go for it, Schwartz. Let's tie our entire identities to this bar and like see what happens. And then serve pogos. Serve pogos. I like how they even put the pictures of the pogos. No, they did. They're always putting those pogos. Yeah, I was just like, oh god, we have to see them again. Okay. Yes, yep, those are pogos. Those are two of the items that are on this menu. Okay, perfect. Yeah, so that was just a thought that I had about freaking Sandoval, but also, you were proven right. So one of your theories that you had, I don't know if you even remember, was when Schwartz made that comment about I think Raquel has a crush on someone else. You were like, in the podcast episode, you're like, man, like Schwartz is getting pretty ballsy, eh? Yeah. Like I think that was kind of like a poke at him. And I was like, oh, you think? Like, that's so blatant. Yeah. And he said that it was. Yeah. Oh man, I completely missed that. That's just how much was happening in this episode, right? Like, every single time that they were talking about one thing, they were talking about Sheena and Brock, they were talking about Katie and Schwartz, like whatever they were talking about, it always just like then like got swirled back into this like mayhem of Scandoval, and it like went back to like something being wrong with Sandoval. Like, yeah, Lala did so it like chaotic. Perfectly. Lala was literally like, anything he said, she was like, I don't care, Mr. F's my partner's best friend. He's like, what? She's like, I don't give an F about you. Like, I don't respect you. You're trash. Oh man, yeah. One interesting thing that happened with Schwartz at the very beginning,
And, I just think Tom Schwartz is in his flop era, right? Like, we are just seeing this poor man disintegrate. Like, nobody thinks that he has like a spine, like it has no legs to stand on. He like was completely disloyal to absolutely everybody in his life except for Tom Sandoval. And it was really interesting at the beginning when he walks into the reunion, like it hasn't even started. He's the first person on stage, and he goes up to Andy, and Andy says, were you silent or were you silenced? And he says, and he's like whispers a little bit under breath. He's like, the answer is both. What a effed up situation. And it's just like why I think Tom Schwartz is in his flop era is because like we get these like moments of truth from Schwartz. Like we get the sense that he's not completely delusional and he is somewhat still connected to reality. Obviously, we then have like him fighting with Katie and like him still thinking that like what he did to Katie was completely acceptable and not understanding why it wouldn't be acceptable. But it's just like, I just feel like sometimes we just get little moments from Schwartz where we're like, okay, so you are actually still in there. You are actually still like a good person, or you can at least still like see situations for what they are and kind of acknowledge, the answer is both. I was silent and I was silenced, and it's a messed up situation. And like, I just wish he would give us more. Like, I think that he like has the potential to be a really amazing like reality TV character if he was just a little bit more real.
Yeah, totally. And like he still has his charm, and sometimes it's still funny. Like even in this episode when I think Sheena was saying like I was glad that they ended up going their separate ways because like Katie deserves like better. And then Schwartz is like, what? That's not possible. You can't get better than me. And then she's like, and Sheena's like, yeah. And he's like, who, me? And then she's like, and she does, she's like deadpan. Like, I'm not giving it to you.
I know. He's like, better than this? Inconceivable. I know. And that's something that kills me is that like there have always been moments throughout the seasons like that where like you see Schwartz and you're like, okay, I like you. You're good. You're funny. Like there's something there. But then we have like the complete antithesis of that where, we have him on Watch What Happens Live calling Katie a monster and then forgetting it instantly. We have like the moments on like when they're at the beach and like he like, they've retired from the beach. They're at the restaurant and he like says hi to Katie again, even though she's like really mad at him. He still wants to like poke her and be like, hi, Katie. And then the second that she's like, I'm not going to say hi to you, I've already said hi to you, he like turns to Sandoval and like whispers under his breath like,
I'm so glad I'm not with her.
Yeah, I'm so glad I'm not with her. She's disgusting. Like,
well, and then another thing that he did is when Katie's talking about what she wants in a friendship, and she's like, like I want like honesty and respect and loyalty, and he's like, those are your terms. And it's like, no, that's just what being a friend is. Like,
I know. Like, I just want some integrity of the person that I'm hanging out with.
It's like, well, that's too much to ask.
Way too much to ask. Impossible. I could never do that. I know. It was so like so unfair. I'm so upset with Schwartz. I don't know. I'm holding out hope that he's gonna be better next season, but I don't want to hold my breath either.
I know, and that's what makes it so frustrating. Is like because like you do have moments and you're funny, and I hate that you made us hate you.
Yeah, but I also hate that like when I do hate you, you then make me like you.
God. This feels like a rom-com somewhere in there.
Right, totally. I don't know. That was just a crazy reunion. I don't know. It was pretty intense. It was really hard to keep track of. Let us know what you guys thought, how you were feeling about how it all went down. And let's maybe get into the Call Her Daddy episode.
Yes. So right before the reunion aired, Ariana went on to Call Her Daddy, which is a really popular podcast. And it was like the longest kind of freeform conversation that we've gotten from Ariana since all of this broke. So I think there was many people who tuned in. And it was really interesting. It was very enlightening. A couple bombshells were dropped that like I don't even think are going to be on the reunion. So I'm happy that they got to come out here. What were some of the things that stood out to you that she had mentioned?
Okay, so there had been a Reddit thread kind of like when all of this broke that basically insinuated that there were times when Raquel and Sandoval were hooking up while Ariana was home and while she was asleep, and kind of Tom basically like going between like the two bedrooms and being like, oh, it was, I don't know.
Disgusting.
Yeah, just not doing what he should. And so getting that confirmation was definitely kind of like felt like the biggest, like, because, you know, so much like stuff can be said on the internet, right? Like, so anybody can make up a lie about what's going on in all of this. And to have that confirmed is very intense.
I feel like a lot of the things that had been leaked ended up being true in like one way or another, which is crazy. Yeah, like, so she did say kind of like, but that, you know, there was a night that she literally went to bed and Tom went to bed with her. And then he left and went to the guest room and like hooked up with Raquel and like went back to bed, which is just like so disgusting and despicable.
Yeah.
Another one was that he had brought her home to his family, which is another rumor that had been swirling around. And then, like we mentioned earlier, that he was also like getting people to like pay for things and put her on their credit card for her. So just like, again, just proving everything that Tom was saying about how like Ariana didn't care when like he was like working overtime to make up, you know, to like basically not let her catch on. Yeah, that was a big one.
Well, and it was interesting too, because Ariana also really went into detail about the therapy that they were doing together. And even we had been kind of like confused by this last week, because it sounded in the conversation between Tom and Ariana at the beginning of the finale like they hadn't gone to therapy. And obviously when we listened to the Howie Mandel podcast, Tom made it sound like they had gone to therapy and that like he had basically gotten them into couples therapy to be able to like break up with her. But then to hear Ariana's kind of like take on this and how like, you know, there were times when even like the therapist like was kind of like on her side about things, and she's been doing her own like therapy work and like, you know, healing from kind of like different like experiences that she's had throughout her life, different relationships. And obviously now she's going to have like a whole new level of therapy bills that she has to deal with from all of this, though she does seem to be recovering quite nicely.
She feels like a person who's very self-aware. Another thing that I noticed or that was interesting as well was she kind of made a comparison that like Tom and her dad were like kind of similar in the sense that like she like her dad would kind of like stay out for like events or things and like not come home as much, and she's like, you know, I love my dad, and like her dad had passed like a few years ago, so she doesn't want to speak ill of him, but she's like, you know, I thought if I could be the perfect girl, then like, you know, Tom would come home and like my dad would come home, and like that was like just such another layer that was so heartbreaking.
Yeah, I know. And well, and it's interesting too, because Call Her Daddy is like ironically almost like the perfect podcast for somebody in Ariana's situation to go on. When I found out that was happening, I was like, oh my god, this makes total sense, because if anybody has listened to Call Her Daddy in general, you know that like Call Her Daddy is like a big fan of Alex Cooper. It's obviously not her name, but whatever.
Her name is actually Daddy.
Her name is Daddy. She is your founding father. She's listened to couples therapy. She's like, there's like a TV show on like Showtime or something that is like a couples therapy, and she's like really gotten like super intensely into it, and she's actually had like a couples therapist come on to the show to like digest all of this. So it really felt like it was the right setting for Ariana to kind of like come forward and like bring her story, and have somebody actually do this like pretty thoughtfully, as opposed to like a Howie Mandel who like really.
Yeah, she actually knew what was going on. I thought that she asked like good thought-provoking questions, and she let just kind of like Ariana lead in the narrative, and I think she asked a lot of the questions that fans were looking at.
Yeah.
The other thing that Ariana said in relation to that too was like when, and it made me think like when Tom Sandoval in the Howie Mandel podcast was like, oh, and then after going to therapy, Ariana was amazing. Like she was great. And she was like the perfect girlfriend. Ariana's take on that was like, she basically would try to go out and party with him more. And she would basically just be like hot and fun and like stay out late. Cause that to him was the perfect girl. And I was like, that's so sad. And like, that says so much about Sandoval.
It really does. Well, and it brings up too, what we like hear in the reunion as well. Because Ariana says like, yeah, of course you liked me when I was young, and like because she was like 28 when she met Sandoval, she was going out and like partying all night, she was like working all night, she was like going out with him and Schwartz and doing shrooms and like, you know, being this like carefree person when she started seeing him. And just the fact that, you know, we made this comparison last week too about the fact that like Raquel is now that carefree, unemployed 28-year-old that like can do whatever and like doesn't really care and wants to be a little bit wild and crazy. I think Ariana brought that up too in this podcast as well. She
did. Yeah. She's like, oh, she's a failed pageant queen. But it's true. Like he's repeating the exact same pattern and like he's going for this, like, it's just, oh my God, dude is going through something. I think I said the same thing about Raquel before. Like they're both going through a thing they need help. And this is not the way that they should have worked through these things that they're going through.
Definitely not. Well, and that also, I don't know, I'm sorry, I'm going back now to the reunion when Lala makes her comment kind of like about Randall, I guess, and how like there are similarities between Tom Sandoval and Randall. They actually pan to Raquel in the trailer and Raquel kind of like rolls her eyes. And I just think it's interesting that she does that because I'm sure that like when Raquel is, you know, Ariana's age, 9 years later, let's say this relationship like it goes for the long haul, you know, they're together until she's like 37 and then like history repeats itself.
And then she's too old, we gotta cut it off.
Yeah, exactly. He's gotta go find like
she aged out of the pageants and now she
aged out of Sandoval's interest as well. Yeah, I just think it's interesting that she's gonna like look back at this time and like she's probably going to look at Sandoval fairly similarly as Lala is looking at Randall. And very similar now to how Ariana is looking at Tom, right? And how she's able to kind of like see all of these discrepancies with kind of like how he treats people and how he behaves and who he is. I thought it was really interesting too in the Call Her Daddy podcast where Ariana, and this is interesting because of the fact that these aired so closely together, with where Ariana is talking about the house parties that Tom used to have, and how like he would have people over until like all hours of the night, you know, they'd be playing loud music, they'd be like making noise, like they live in like a suburb, right, like of LA, they live in the valley, so like they live in a very residential area and their neighbors would always get upset, and so like the person that like they would usually go to is Ariana, and Ariana would then have to like either go downstairs and be like, guys, you have to quiet it down because like, you know, we live in a residential neighborhood, we don't live in WeHo. And so she was always having to be kind of like the policeman at their house, making sure that like the party wasn't going on too late or it wasn't being too fun. And then the never before seen clip that we see that got like released like afterwards, from the finale this week is Tom Sandoval talking about how what he's like meeting up with Raquel and he's like taking a video of like the like I guess like all the cars parked outside of his like in the front of his house. And how like all these people have clearly like come over to like hang out with Ariana and to like kind of gather around her and like be there for her. And Raquel, in an amazing moment of, you know, intellectual brilliance, is like that's amazing, that's so good that like she has people around her that are like there to support her, like I'm really glad to hear that. And Tom Sandoval, like of course, is like Mr. Grumpy Pants and like is all like an 8-year-old petulant child being like, oh, this makes me really upset because you know, I was never allowed to even have people over for my birthday, like, you know, I can't believe now she's having a party, like she's having a house party, as if that's what's happening right now. And yeah, like just his interpretation of that in relation to what we just learned from Ariana is like very interesting and a very interesting interpretation of the events.
I know, he's such a man child.
Sandoval is a liar.
Sandoval's a liar. Honestly, I've been singing that all day.
It's a song of the summer. It's a song of the summer, guys. It's
so good.
I love all the remixes people are doing on Instagram.
Another thing that came out too, that's actually much less fun, but I'm so happy that she put this out there, was she's like, the thing that made her the most upset is basically the way that he's like weaponizing her mental health. And the way that she talked about that is like, you know, she has had like Ariana's had suicidal ideation before, and like for him to take that and weaponize it as like a reason for her to be able to be treated poorly is just so disgusting. She also clarified that she never threatened her life, like that is not what happened. She basically said like, if you break up with me, like I'm going to move and I'm going to quit the show, and the life that I have now is going to be done because I'm going to go and do something different. Oh my God, the mental gymnastics and like that he needs to jump through to spin that. Like, how terrible. Like, can you believe on television he put that out there?
I know. Well, and I'm sorry because this is like going in a new direction, but like even the way, because you're right, like the version of his events and what he's saying and the truth and the reality is so different. And we're seeing that even with like his version of, we were never honest on television about our relationship. We were always painting this as like a perfect relationship. And it was this season that I decided I didn't want to have that facade anymore.
After I had an affair.
And I needed to make sure that everybody knew that it was Ariana's fault. So he's like changed this narrative in which, like, because even Jax has said like, oh, that they have this, like, they come across as having this like perfect relationship and it's a total veneer, it's not real, like it's a fallacy. And so he's painted this narrative. And then if you do look back at like the seasons that have happened, like Ariana's been very open about her mental health. She's been very open about what that looks like and like what she's been struggling with. She has been an open book, and or at least in a lot of regards. And even within their own relationships, she has talked about kind of like the struggles that she's had with intimacy, with her own body, her body issues. Like that's come up season and season again. And so for him to be like creating this like image of like, we never told the truth, we never talked about what our relationship was really like that's just not the case.
If anything, it's like it was like his part that was hiding, and like that apparently he's like yelling at her a lot, and they're like getting into these big fights, and if anything, she's probably shielding like the world from that part of him, and he should be grateful in that sense.
That she was willing to go along with his bit.
That whole part was so infuriating too, because like of course he had his checklist, and part of that was to talk to production and say like, oh, it's not fair, like we hide our lies, like that was stamped in September, I'm pretty sure. So like,
no, it definitely was.
At that point, you're already like having this affair. Like basically nothing that he's going to say is going, like, I'm so happy that Ariana at the beginning was like, he's throwing anything at the wall and seeing what sticks, because, and like, she shot down a couple of questions from Andy too on like asking about the state of the relationship. Cause she's like, it doesn't matter. Like he's not telling like he's making these stories up. Nothing we say is going to be true. So you know what? You go on your podcast tour, girl. Like I'll listen to a million more. Bring
every single one of them. Exactly. Yeah.
You want to come on this one?
Just it. Come on the Couchwives. And that's just why the reunion was like very satisfying to watch. It was just the fact that like all of these people were united in the fact that they were going to take down Tom Sandoval. Like they were going to like officially, put anything to bed that he was putting out there, because they knew the truth. And it was a good watch. Can't wait for next week.
It was very entertaining. Let us know your
satisfying.
thoughts on the podcast, on the reunion. What are your speculations on this big bomb drop that's coming out?
Massive reveal. It's coming out.
Let us know.